Our life is always this equation of what we are with what we would like to be, and also a little bit of what we have been. It is not possible for us to combine the present moment without the combination of all this and the combination of the future, this time that we don't even know if we will have. It depends on the articulation, last year that we had with the present that is today. This articulation that allows us to take steps, to walk, always believing that the hand of God sustains us, but believing in the right way. Whenever I think of God's providence, I think of it as a favor, that it never stops being present in my life. But at the same time, it never takes away my possibility of doing my part. Because humanly, my people, we have already learned, even psychology, pedagogy teaches us, that a good educator never gives his disciple a ready-made lesson. Would it be a crime against a disciple to offer him a ready-made lesson? The master gives the certainty of his presence, to remove any doubts, to be able to help, to dissolve that which is hindering learning. But at some moments, the disciple will have to live with his loneliness. The master is silent and refuses to give the answer we are seeking. It is not like that in life. Answers that God can only give us through his silence. This is the hand of God also sustains us that sometimes we have the illusion. This is the fruit of a naive vision. Unfortunately, religious discourse throughout our lives can put us in a naive view that God will do everything for us. That God does this, that God does that, right? We have the right to believe in divine protection, but we are not exempt from doing our part because it is a question of wisdom, of maturity. The father does this with his son. The mother does this with her son. Love cannot make us think. The love that we know God has for us cannot make us think about who will do it. I really like that expression. We only have the right to hope for the impossible after we have done everything possible. So God protects us. Yes. But he also asks that I do my part in this protection. I pray to God for my life. I ask him to give me health. But I need to do my part so that this health becomes a reality in my life. It is not the care I take of myself. It's an expression of this part of me, the miracle that I need to perform daily. So, sometimes I identify the hand of God being the present in my story, but no, holding me as I think it is. Some helplessness is very important in our human process. It would be very interesting if we learned this from the cradle, but unfortunately not. So it's never too late for us to learn. The lack of protection that we sometimes feel in life is also the hand of God, because he loves to leave you unprotected, so that you are exposed, that which you need to live and experience alone. His presence always watching us, always guiding us, because this is very interesting. The more we grow, the more we mature in our experience with God, the greater our capacity to hear and understand his voice in our story. So God protects me like this, even when he is distant. It's not that he is distant. It's that we feel that way because of life situations. The context makes it unfavorable to perceive this intense presence in our lives. So that moment of discomfort, oh my God, it seems like I've been abandoned by the Lord, doesn't it? This despair is part of his protection in our lives. Because those who love know very well that love also needs to work through the harsh experience of being unprotected. Because too much love leaves us unprotected. Isn't that how it works? When a person is overprotected, deep down, on the contrary, there's a lack of protection because that person is unable to mature. Then they will be eternally naive. They will forever believe that they are in a fairy tale, and life is not a fairy tale. So, believing in God's protection does not give us the right to think that God will do everything for us, that he will walk for us. He will always be strengthening us in the face of these battles we must face. But we will be responsible for carrying out our part. It was like that with Moses. This song mentions Moses, right? It was that one. It was this hand that helped Moses divide the sea in two. In this passage, a very great wealth is in Exodus. When Moses is terrified, why did he take the people out of Egypt? And he went towards that protected, promised land. You see that it is also a little protected, right? The promised land would be reached with a promise that God made to Moses, as long as they encouraged themselves to take those people out of slavery and go through the difficulties of desire. See here, anyone who has had the opportunity to go to Israel knows very well what the desert is. If you enter that desert to reach as a promise, it's a very difficult one. And the people believed, followed Moses, and began to live in the constraints of the desert. The hunger began to make them miss the onions. It's not that in Egypt they ate onions. During the time of slavery, onions were the staple food. That's why we sometimes use the expression, "Don't cry over the onions of Egypt." It's not like that. You probably heard this expression when someone advises you not to stop mourning the past. What does it mean to mourn the onions of Egypt? I mean, I was a slave, but I had this food. I had onions to feed me, and now I'm free, but I have nothing. Calm down. Give the desert time. Allow the desert to tell you what it needs to say. Even hunger. Restriction is extremely important in the human process. We constantly identify that people are spoiled because they lack nothing. It's terrible when you have a child who's been pampered since childhood, lacking absolutely nothing. And suddenly, in the wilderness of life, that person has to face the desert life. They don't have enough ammunition to cope. So what can you do? How do we face the desert there in that moment? When Moses led the people out of slavery and encouraged himself to lead these people through the desert on the way to the promised land, he also feels fear. He also doesn't know what will happen. That's why, all the time, through the manifestations of God, in that moment of Moses' life, he communicates with God. These are epiphanies, right? These are the glorious manifestations of God there, through simple reality. It's the burning bush. It's the stone that gushes water. Anyway, God talks to Moses, gives him signs that he's on the right path, but doesn't deprive him of the vulnerability that the desert causes him. So, vulnerability. The desert, materially speaking, he can establish a trust in God that no other comfort had given. Do you see how interesting it is? How this vulnerability, this apparent vulnerability, has all the hidden, behind-the-scenes care there. Just like you, as a father, the mother, and you create a restriction for your child so that he can mature. Just like that. Sometimes you take something away from your child so that he truly feels the lack, so that later he will be able to appreciate it later. I say again, many people don't make mistakes in life because they lack nothing. Then you notice that when there's too much missing, it can also cause an imbalance. 11, lack of trust in life, in people. Anyway, that's what balance works here when you start to educate by putting protection and parentheses. Protection's where that person will still have to face the situation alone. You are seeing from afar. Me, I faced extremely difficult situations in my life where it wasn't enough for the other person to say, "I'm here." Why? Because they were mine. It even helps to look to the side and know that you have a friend with you, that there's a mother, that there's a father or brother. But in many moments of our lives, this ordeal is to be lived in solitude. That's when I need to live. This feeling of being unprotected, in the same way that Moses lived when he stepped into discomfort of the desert. When facing those discomforts, he understood that it is the human condition. So I also have this experience, do you? I don't want to spend my life in white clouds. I really don't. And that's why, since I was a child, when life was difficult for me, I found something in that discomfort that made me think bigger, that made me think beyond. Moses, living the discomfort of the desert, needed to convince those around him that that discomfort would be worth it. What's more, some wanted to return to slavery. Look at human weakness. It's very present in our lives when we're uncomfortable. So many people. I'll give you a simple example to help you understand. There are people who need to break up with relationships that are terrible, disastrous. That person only hurts you, you know that, but you have a bond with them. You have an emotional need. You can't break up with that relationship. Then, suddenly, you get encouraged. Everything becomes clear to you. This person is not good for me. I can't marry this person. Because if it's like this when we're dating, imagine when we're married, and then when we get married, it'll become hell. Even worse than it already is. Then you've encouraged yourself, motivated by people who are by your side, to break up. Then it's terrible on the day you make a mistake. The suffering is cruel inside you. It feels like you'll never recover, that you only think about that person. Why? Because even though she hurts you so much, You have an unhealthy bond with her, of emotional dependence. You know she hurts you, but you don't know how to live without her. Then you start taking steps. The first week is horrible. You're alone, you cry. You can't hear the music. You can't smell it. You can't see that little piece of being what giving liberation passes is, as if you were walking to a land that will only do you good. 1 month later, that suffering got better. 2 months after that suffering, better. And suddenly you don't even remember it anymore. Of course, there's still a silent bond there, being disarmed because emotional dependence doesn't die overnight. We need it. It's as if you were suffocating a cancer cell with chemotherapy. You know, you're taking the life out of the cancer cell, the cell that kills us. Then, let's say 3 months later, you meet that person again and you have that famous relapse. Then there you go. The castle you were building, the ground you had walked on, which had been so difficult. You throw it away and you go back to Egypt. You go back to slavery. Do you do the same thing? Moses' companions wanted to do something else, to go back to eating the onion, to go back to eating the rotten, spoiled food. Then you rekindle that relationship because it's unhealthy, and you didn't maintain the proper distance you should. Because when you have this emotional dependence, you have to establish distance, because otherwise you won't heal. You have to stop wanting to know about that person's life, because otherwise you won't heal. You need to stop snooping on their Facebook, because otherwise you won't heal. You need to stop investigating their life. Where do they say they were? You have to stop all the things that might make you want to go back to the EXE, because otherwise you'll never free yourself. Then, 3 months later, you're beautiful and beautiful, already killing the cancer cell. You go in for a few more kisses. That horrible dependence returns, and hell returns to your life in your first week. It's even good that everything is coming back. Soon, my daughter, you'll be in a worse hell than you were 3 months ago. That's how it is. When we don't know how to live with the discomfort that builds us up, we boycott ourselves all the time. It's like quitting drinking. It's like quitting smoking. You go a year without smoking, and you celebrate because you stop releasing that carcinogenic toxin into your body, and suddenly you go there and light a cigarette for no reason, and that addiction comes back as if it were a monster capable of eating you whole. All that you made the first few days without smoking, why do they go down the drain? All that sacrifice goes down the drain. Why? Because you weren't able to experience the discomfort of giving up. My people, it's amazing how this hand of God helps us like this, making us aware of what we need to break in our lives. These are situations that we need to set limits for, because otherwise we will never be healed. We will be eternally sick in the line of those in need, crying and begging for a little bread of kindness from another, a little bread of affection from another. For God's sake, we were not made for this. We were not made to drag around emotionally dependent people. We were made to love. And love only has meaning in our lives if it is there to build us up, if it is to help us get through the discomfort of the desert. Otherwise, this pseudo-love, this false love that we sometimes say we feel for each other, that doesn't help us through the discomfort of the desert, makes no sense. I need to live my desires. You need to live yours. And true friends are those who recognize the desires that the other needs to go through. And he says exactly that. Are we going to go through this desert because you need it? Now, Pollyanna, she wants that happy life to be in order. Remember that character? Pollyanna, where everything was a game of contentment, right? Stop it. Kill that childish instinct that exists within you. That makes you afraid of life's discomforts. The discomfort of life, when well lived, only makes us better. Take off that mask of poor thing that you stick on your face so that others will eternally pity you. You only waste time in life like that. What nonsense. God, hand it over. It is so that we have the conditions to cross this desert. Isn't it so that we keep falling back eternally and going back to eating the onions of Egypt? Because we felt sorry for ourselves. Because we felt sorry for others. The journey is forward that we go. And there comes a time when Moses comes before God. He goes there. Now you solve the situation, because I don't know what else to do. They've already built a golden calf in the middle of the road. They've already caused trouble. They're even worshiping other situations. So, not even remembering that you exist. I just don't come back. But, they don't come back geographically because they were already far from the edge. They would die along the way. But they wouldn't come back geographically, but they would come back emotionally. That IT must be physical. I've already left prison, but prison hasn't left me. Is that how it works? I've already taken steps toward my freedom, but I haven't achieved the conquest of my freedom. I haven't decreed the conquest of my freedom. So I'm effectively stuck in my past, lamenting the onions of Egypt, lamenting the relationship that ended, the situation that was ended, the friendship that was betrayed. So when Moses is before the Red Sea and he's terrified because now they have nowhere else to go, either they cross the sea or return to Egypt, and Pharaoh's army is already arriving to capture them. What does he do? He has a private meeting with you. Isn't it an urgent private audience? Call God's secretary and tell him, for the love of God, and ask him to see me today, because I can't go without this answer anymore. Pharaoh's army is coming. And then he thinks God would give him an easy answer, right? He would give a quick solution. What does God say? Remember, we remember. It happens, right? Get in that water. Look at that strong phrase. Tell the people to walk. I will not do for you what only you can do. I will give all the thanks for the miracle to happen. I will strengthen your courage. But if you do not put your foot in the water, if you do not challenge the sea, it will not part. That is what the people did. Moses in front, certainly full of fear too, right? Oh, my merciful Father, what will happen now? When did that start to sink in? Put your feet in the water. God does his part. My people, it doesn't even matter to us if it happened that way. Does it matter to us? It's the fact that God does this daily in our lives. Whenever I've encouraged myself to overcome the seas that challenge me, I'm exercising God's care in my life. Whenever I've encouraged myself to put my foot in the sea, which threatens me, I'm fulfilling the part of the promise that he will always be by my side. Do you do the same thing? Whenever you challenge your seas, whenever you face your discomfort, when you're not afraid of discomfort, it arrives. When you look in the face, you speak now. What are we going to do from this moment on? What good do you bring me? Where are you challenging me to? I will recruit my best parts here, because that's all I care about. If discomfort comes to me, I need to cross this desert to know, to be able to reach that part of the promised land that awaits me. This one that works. There is no magic formula for life. Even if we didn't believe in God, we would have to live through the discomforts that make us grow. Those who don't believe in God need to face the discomforts of their history, their existence. Now, it's clear that when we believe in God, when we believe that there is someone superior to us enabling us to make the crossing, an additional comfort in what he offers, that's why now, of course, when we believe in God, when we believe that there is someone superior to us enabling us to make the crossing, one more comfort offered by a museum. That's why the word is this. If we do not live the daily confrontations of our sayings, of our conflicts, of our fears, we will never reach the knowledge of the earth that he prepared for us. We're going for a quick break. We will be back soon.